Cyclist down. Sedatives. Each day, someone dies in an automobile crash due to impairment by prescription drugs. Americans take drugs to sleep, relieve pain, reduce anxiety and depression, and recreationally. Sedative drugs, such as Ambien, combined with alcohol, even below the legal limit, dramatically affect the brain's judgment and psychomotor functions. Just because a doctor prescribed a sedative does not mean you can drive. Over-the-counter medications also can affect driving skills. Consult your physician and pharmacist for the impact of sedative medication. It can be fatal for anyone on the road if you drive.
On July 3rd, I responded to a report of a personal injury auto accident involving a car bicyclist on State Route 32 in the town of Bethlehem, in the area of the Bethlehem compost facility. When I first arrived on the scene, I could see a large amount of debris in the roadway that appeared to be vehicle parts or definitely related to the crash, important physical evidence. So I positioned my patrol vehicle as far back as possible to avoid tampering with any of that evidence or contaminating that scene. When I walked up to the scene and under the vehicle, I could see a male subject lying there. His one leg was wrapped up around the axle, the front axle of the vehicle, and entangled, and I could immediately tell that he was obviously deceased, as that based on the drag patterns and the blood that was evident in the road where the body had been dragged along Route 32. Immediately, my first contact with Ms. Kowzak, I could tell that her actions were very lethargic, very slowed. Her motor coordination was very poor, and she kept repetitively asking the same questions, and I could immediately tell that there was some type of impairment to her ability to operate the motor vehicle. I asked her to step away from the crash scene so that EMS personnel could attempt to attend to the victim, and I brought her to the back of my patrol vehicle so I could administer standardized field sobriety tests. I immediately began administering standardized field sobriety tests with the assistance of another member of my department. During those tests, she had a great difficulty in maintaining balance and being able to stand straight. In fact, she almost fell over several times and had to be assisted by the other officer on the scene to prevent her from falling. So I continued to administer those tests and determined that she failed all the field sobriety tests that were administered that morning. To extricate Joel from the scene, the fire department actually used airbags to lift the entire vehicle off of him, at which point they had to manually remove his leg from around the front axle of the vehicle before his body could be removed from under the car. During the interview at the police station, it was very similar to the interaction on the scene, and then Ms. Kowzak kept asking the same questions over and over about how the crash occurred, if the person was going to be okay, and trying to describe what took place. Her motor coordination was very poor, and she was extremely lethargic and laid back in her behaviors about what had took place and what was going on at the time. Based on my interaction with Diane Kowzak, it was immediately apparent that she was impaired, and her ability to operate the motor vehicle was impaired. Based on the interview and the fact that she admitted the consumption of alcohol, as well as a blood test that subsequently tested positive for a very low dose of alcohol, but it confirmed the presence of the alcohol in her system, as well as the presence of Ambien, and that confirmed our suspicions that the combination of those two drugs is what really led to this crash.
Ambien is classified as a non-benzodiazepine sleep aid. So if Ambien is used with alcohol, it has the potential to potentiate the effects of the medication. So the medication itself, Ambien or zolpidem, which is the generic name for Ambien, is used to induce sleep. When taken with alcohol, it can potentiate the effects, and sometimes 1 + 1 is not 2 there, 1 + 1 is 3. So we see some additive effects. Ambien is typically prescribed in a dose of anywhere between 5 to 10 milligrams at bedtime. And we see some differences depending on whether the person is older, so someone that may be geriatric or a younger individual, and also too based on gender. Recently, the FDA this past year came out with a recommendation that women should use no more than 5 milligrams at bedtime, which is currently half of the recommended dose right now due to a more pronounced response.
Part of the investigation, we determined that Diane Kowzak's blood came back with a high level of Ambien. Our investigation led us to examine the half-life of the drug to determine the points at which the drug was released into her body, as well as the possibility that she took a different form of Ambien that's actually a time release that releases the drug to the body over a certain period of time, as opposed to being absorbed all at once when it's ingested. And we took those factors in consideration based on the extremely high level of Ambien, and theorized that she had taken Ambien on in addition to the previous evening at a later time, possibly even that morning as well.
Driving is such a complex process that requires a lot of biologic processes, requires your ability to understand your place in time and place, that you need to have good judgment. Ambien is a central nervous system depressant. It has the ability to affect all of these. Central nervous system depressants have the ability to influence an individual's ability to drive. They'll impair their judgment, impair reaction time, and make it difficult for them to mentate clearly.
I got the call about Joel's crash from Daryl, one of the cycling team members, and it was just absolutely devastating. I couldn't believe that Joel would be run over by a vehicle while he was riding his bicycle. He was on Route 32 in the town of Bethlehem, and the area where he was killed has very wide shoulders, and knowing how we all rode safely, I just couldn't imagine that a car could possibly hit Joel and kill him. It was absolutely devastating. In terms of drug driving, and I have to say drunk driving too, it's totally preventable, and prevention has to be a #1 public priority. The problem with drunk and drug driving, once you're there, you can't think. And people have to be aware of the potential consequences ahead of time. That's when they can think.
With the Clausac case, you're dealing with someone who had had more than what was prescribed. And the goal of our office was to get a conviction, to be able to start putting the word out, to let the public know Ambien's just as dangerous as anything else, just like the medications that we had in the Burgess case. Any of those medications can be extremely dangerous, and you can't just assume that you're okay because your doctor wrote the script. And we had hoped that the conviction and the sentences that were attached would start to get that conversation going, get the media talking, get the public talking, and it has.
My experience as a judge and just as a member of the community is that a growing number of people are taking prescribed medications. But in the future, I think that it is necessary for doctors to look at the entire situation, all of the medications, all of the needs, to know the patient better so that they can make a determination as to whether or not it is safe for that individual to operate a motor vehicle, and if so, under what circumstances. I think it's also incumbent upon pharmacies to make a similar determination when they see the growing number of medications that are prescribed to individuals, to warn the individual, not just give them the container that has a written warning on it, almost in some situations confronting a customer or a patient, to have the patient understand that if they continue to drive, that there may be some consequences. There may be people that are injured or killed, and they may be charged with criminal offenses.
If I feel that someone's taking a lot of medication, you have to take it upon yourself as a pharmacist to walk over there and alert these people that medications they are taking could possibly cause them impairment. The National Database, or the ISTOP program, would provide physicians and pharmacists to view a patient's profile so that they could see if there is doctor shopping involved or abuse of medications.
Hearts were broken. You know, I just can't imagine the brutality of being forced by another human being into this situation, forced into the pain and the trauma and the grief of being killed by drug driving or drunk driving. Law enforcement has to be tough, the prosecutors have to be tough, and the courts have to be tough. This is not okay. This is a decision that a person makes. It's not okay. It's a decision, it's a choice, and it has to stop.